Just a announcement that Representative Ousley is replacing Representative Alcala today, so welcome to committee this morning. Committee, you should have received through email the minutes for the February 16th meeting. Were there any changes to those minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting on February 16th. All right, the motion has been made by Representative Wolfmore, second by Representative Sutton. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. We'll go back and circle for bill introductions after our budget presentations this morning, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chairman Sutton, the chairman for the General Government Budget Committee. So please indicate which budget you're going to be starting with this morning. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's go ahead and get started with the Department of Labor. You'll find that on Volume 2, page 1164, for those of you playing at home. Now, I'll make no promises, but I'm going to target getting us out of here in less than 3.5 hours today.
That would be great.
Let me clear my space a little bit. All right, much better. All right, the agency estimates a revised 22 expenditures of $298 million, including 17, have you all found your places? All right, very good. That includes 17.7 million SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $164.9 million and an SGF increase of 6.8 million from the 22 approved amount. The SGF increase is due to the agency's supplemental request of 6.8 million SGF for additional staffing in the administration and unemployment insurance services programs. The all funds decrease is primarily due to decreased expenditures on unemployment insurance benefits. The agency states it estimates decreased benefit expenditures as additional federal benefit programs have ended and fewer individuals are claiming benefits. This decrease is partially offset by increased federal COVID-19 relief funds. In August of 21, the State Finance Council approved $11 million in COVID-19 relief funds for surge staffing for the agency's call center. The governor recommends expenditures of $291.8 million, including 11.1 SGF. This is a decrease of 6.6 million, all SGF, below the agency's 22 revised estimate. This decrease is due to the governor not recommending the agency's enhancement request for staffing for the administration and unemployment insurance benefits programs. This decrease is partially offset by the governor's recommendations of 135,000 SGF for salary enhancements for customer service representatives and adjudicators, and 100,000 SGF for costs to implement the HB 2001, which requires the agency to investigate complaints filed under the provisions of the bill. The budget, that was the governor's recommendation, and the House Budget Committee concurred with that recommendation. I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Sutton. Last session, I believe when we passed the fiscal year 2022 budget, we put money in for the modernization or updating of the IT system.
That's correct.
Do you have an update on that?
Last I heard, they were coming in the final moments of signing with a company. There had been some problems of the RFP not being received as well with the target company as was expected. But last I heard, they were in the final moments of negotiation to sign with a company to initiate that development.
And that dollar amount, was that 42 million?
That sounds right. Doing that from memory.
And are they going to need any other additional funds for that?
Actually, I think most of that is coming out of federal funds. So I'm not even sure that 42 is going to be necessary.
All right, thank you. Committee, any questions for Chairman Sutton on fiscal year 2022? Seeing none, move on to 2023.
All right. The agency requests expenditures of $222 million, including 8.5 million SGF. This is a decrease of 76.6 million and an SGF decrease of $9 million, below the 22 revised estimate. The SGF decrease is due to the unemployment insurance benefit system update, which occurred in '22 and does not reoccur in '23, so that doesn't carry over, partially offset by the agency's enhancement request for additional staffing. The all funds decrease is primarily due to decreased expenditures on unemployment insurance benefits as people go back to work. The governor recommends 23 expenditures of $217.3 million, including 3.9 million SGF. This is a decrease of 4.6 million, all of it SGF, below the 23 request from the agency. The decrease is primarily due to the governor recommending only partial funding of the agency's enhancement request for additional staffing. The agency requests 7.2 million SGF and 110 FTE positions for additional staffing and in the administration and unemployment insurance programs. The governor recommends 2.2 million SGF and 30 FTEs for additional staffing in the unemployment insurance programs and the administration. The governor also recommends 408,000 SGF for customer service representatives and adjudicators' salary enhancements. And the House committee thought that sounded like a pretty good idea. So I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to fiscal year 2023? All right, Representative Helgerson.
In going through the analysis, I'm somewhat confused from 22, 23, and what we're planning in the future. We pumped in or attempted to pump in a lot of part-time individuals that may have become full-time. Can you give me I'll call it an FTE plan, what we went through last year and how they expect to go in the future, and how this computer system, this modernization is going to change our FTE?
Chairman Sutton.
All right. First off, I don't think there's any real expectation that this computer system is going to modify the number of people that have to answer the phones or adjudicate cases. I think the modernization is really the target for the modernization, as I understand it, is to make our system compatible with any federal programs that come down the pike. One of the challenges that we ran into during the pandemic and the federal cures for said problem were that we had 6 or 7 different federal programs all throwing into unemployment, and our system was not designed for that sort of flexibility, if you will. And so what we're hoping to achieve is not what we achieved prior.
Representative Helgerson.
I'm still somewhat confused. How many part-time individuals did we put in 22 or contract employees? And were those individuals moved into full-time positions or continued as contract, or were any of those contracts, if there are, have they all been ended?
To a degree, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
To a large degree, those contracts have all ended. Not 100%, but to a large degree. I think what you're talking about is surge staffing, and we did contract that out almost, well, I won't say entirely, but that was, as far as the surge is concerned, that was done by contracting out with an out-of-state company. Wasn't thrilled with that idea. However, that contract has been cut way, way back. There are still, I think, the number 12 comes to my head, 12 employees that are still maintained for staffing in case of an uptick. But for the vast majority, that contract has ended.
Representative Helgerson.
So we've kept the same number of employees in 22. Everything added was not additional FTEs, but were just contract employees or surge employees. And then in 23, the governor has recommended 30 new FTEs, and we have agreed to that, but those are the only staffing changes we've made throughout this process?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at the overview from 21 to 23. So in 23, I see that the agency is requesting in SGF 8.5 million. But so their actual in 21 was 1.4, and then it went up to 17 million. Is that all the surge in wages? And then it goes back to 8. I'm just trying to understand the 1 million, 17 million, 8 million that they're requesting.
Chairman Sutton.
It's quite a change.
It is quite a change. The 6.8, I covered that in one part right here. Just one moment.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to phone a friend on that. Oh, and it's Victoria.
So in 22, they had the surge staffing office, which is state general fund, but then they also had the 9.6 million for the UI modernization, which is why the agency request for SGF is so high. And then it comes back down in 23 because the 9.6 million for the UI modernization isn't there anymore.
Thank you. She's phenomenal, by the way. The 9.6 million that was SGF for the modernization program in 22 isn't recurring in 23. So you're going to see a pretty big reduction in SGF spend on 23.
And you said that was
9.6 million in that year.
Okay, so that takes, of the 16 million, that takes care of 9.
Right. Then we have the surge staffing that made up the remainder of that.
Okay, and we didn't have surge staffing in 21?
I don't think it was budgeted for.
Okay, I see. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the surge employees, I think they hired at least 400, maybe 500 people, and it wasn't, that was the staff that they used. It wasn't, they hired quite a few people in the Department of Labor as well, and used other departments. They did everything they could.
Right.
And the Department of Labor is going to be presenting at 1:30 in Commerce Committee if anybody's interested in coming to hear an update. And I think a lot of that increase in next year's salary is for Julie McGinney for doing a heck of a job, don't you think?
I kind of wanted to try to cloak that, but yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Right. Thanks. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, couldn't let a day go by with the Department of Labor without mentioning Julie.
That's fine. Any further questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to 2023? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton.
I will move the House Budget Committee recommendations for the Department of Labor for 2022 and 2023.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Burrows. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's look at the Board of Examiners and Optometry. You'll find that in Volume 1, page 685. See how I organized these? We used Volume 2, the first one, but all the other 3 budgets are in Volume 1, so you won't have to bounce back and forth. They don't care.
Yeah, your staffing shifted too.
Oh, it's Mr. Lemunion. He's just as knowledgeable, but...
I'm not asking what he said after that.
All right, Chairman Sutton.
All right, for the Board of Examiners and Optometry, the agency estimates revised expenditures of $197,000 on 22. This is an increase of $25,000. The increase is due to the agency's supplemental request for an unforeseen increase in legal expenditures. The agency estimates one FTE position, which is exactly the same as it's been since time immemorial. The governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate, and so did the House Budget Committee. I'll stand for a question if you can come up with one.
Just move on to 2023.
All right. For 23, the agency estimates revised expenditures of $199,618, all from special revenue funds for 23. The revised estimate is an increase of the same $25,000 above the agency's 23 approved amount. Also, still due to the supplemental request for an unforeseen increase in legal expenditures. The agency requests one FTE position, which is the same as 22 and 23 and 21 and 20 and 19 and 18 and 17. The governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate, and so did the House Budget Committee.
All right, thank you, Chairman Sutton. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the unforeseen increase in 22, I'd get us kind of unforeseen. They were now foreseeing perhaps what might be in 23. I was kind of expecting an unforeseen expense to maybe be a one-time expenditure rather than a continuing.
I think they want, Mr. Chairman, I think the principle here is that they just want to get that legal defense fund built up a little bit so that if somewhere down the road there's a problem, they have the funding allocation to take care of it.
So thank you. And not a huge issue, but is there a change in liability which we may need to also address to help to alleviate an ongoing nature for that liability fund?
1 second.
Chairman Sutton.
There you go. Yeah, there's not an increased liability or anything along those lines. They're just wanting to, it's a 2-year budget, so when they put $25,000 in, it goes in both years. And so they're just wanting to protect themselves in case of something. There's nothing looming on the horizon as near as I can tell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to fiscal year 2022 or 2023 for the Board of Examiners and Optometry? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton.
I will move the Budget Committee recommendations for the Board of Examiners and Optometry for budget years 2022 and 2023.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Burrows. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Sutton.
All right, and now it's Judy Day. Let's start with the Judicial Council. Volume 1, page 236. See, I love the fact that they're actually opening the books. So you want everything seen and right. Well, no, there's more. There's more in the book. But in years past, people didn't follow along.
All right, Chairman Sutton.
People started to look at it. I like it. That's good. Yeah, I love it. There's more in the book. Maybe I should open it. Yep, volume 1, page 236. All right, the agency requests a revised estimate of $618,000 in expenditures, all from the Judicial Council Fund and the Publications Fee Fund. 5 FTE positions for 22. This represents a reduction of $4,000 below the amount approved by the 21 legislature. The revised estimate includes a reduction of $2,288 in salary expenditures to account for changes in personnel. Since the conclusion of the 21 session, the agency replaced a departing administrative assistant at a lower starting rate. The revised estimate also includes a reduction of almost $1,800 in fringe benefit expenditures to account for year-to-year changes in rates. These benefits include employer contributions to CAPERS, health insurance, unemployment compensation. The revised estimate includes 5 FTE positions, which is exactly the same as the approved amount. The governor concurs, sort of, in that the governor passes through the agency recommendations, and the House Budget Committee concurred with the governor's concurrence. Stand for questions.
All right, are there any questions for Chairman Sutton? Seeing none, move on to 2023.
All right, the agency requests $625,000 in expenditures, all also from special funds. This represents an increase of $7,323 above the revised 22 estimate. The request includes an additional $5,000 in expenditures for attorney fees associated with registering the agency's copyrighted materials with the United States Copyright Office. These services are part of the publication process and occur as the agency produces the majority of its documents and materials. For fiscal year 23, the agency will distribute supplements to the Municipal Court Manual, the pattern instructions for Kansas, pattern instructions for Kansas, the PIK, civil fourth, and the PIC criminal fourth. The request also includes an increase of $2,300 in a variety of expenditures, travel reimbursement, printing costs, local telephone services. The request still includes the same 5 FTE positions. The governor concurred, and so did we. I stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Chairman Sutton? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the committee recommendations for the Judicial Council for budget years 2022 and 2023.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Burrows. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Sutton.
Save the best for last. We'll go to the Judicial Branch. Find that in Volume 1, page 209. All right, the agency requests a revised estimate of $165.5 million in expenditures and 1,938 FTE positions in 22, including 138 million SGF and 18.7 million from the docket fee fund. This represents a reduction of $9.6 million below the amount approved by the 21 legislature. The revised estimate includes reductions in expenditures budgeted from the docket fee fund because of decreased revenue attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. That fund went down $8.6 million, by the way. Subsequent to the 21 session, the agency adjusted planned expenditures from the docket fee from $27.3 million to $18.7. These expenditures occur in a variety of operational categories and were supplemented by an additional 7.4 million SGF appropriated in the 21 fiscal year to replace the lost docket fee fund revenue. This committee did that. The revised estimate also includes a reduction in e-court maintenance expenditures and in salaries and wages fringe benefit expenditures to reflect CAPER's employer contribution rates decreasing from 15.09 to 14.33% in fiscal year 22. This reflects the issuance of $500 million in pension obligation bonds in HB 2405 that we passed last year, and associated rate adjustments required by SB 159. The decreases from the approved budget are partially offset by increases attributable to higher distributions from federal grant funds, which was an increase of $405,000, and for 2 capital improvement projects that were not present in the approved budget, an increase of $425,000. Those projects include the creation of a secure mail processing area and the second phase of the Court of Appeals Judicial Office remodeling project. Both projects were presented to and approved by the Joint Committee on State Building Construction on February 10, 22. The governor concurs with the revised estimate, kind of the same deal as the Judicial Council, but the Budget Committee similarly concurred with the governor's recommendation. I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to fiscal year 2022? Seeing none, move on to 2023.
Okay. The agency requests $177.7 million in expenditures and 2,000 FTE positions for 23, including $148.3 million SGF and $21.8 million from the docket fee fund. This represents an increase of $12.2 million above the agency's revised estimate in 22. The request includes $5.4 million in enhancement expenditures and an additional 58 FTE positions to create new judge and staff positions for '23. Based on the findings of National Center for State Courts weighted workload studies on district judges and administrative assistants, as well as feedback from chief judges of district courts throughout Kansas, the agency determined that an additional 14 district court judges, 9 district magistrate judges, 13 court reporters, and 22 administrative assistants were needed. The request includes $326,000 in enhancement expenditures and an additional 4 FTE positions for personnel to accommodate for efficiencies at the district court level and the expansion of technology services statewide. These new positions include an IT security analyst, which would assist the district court operations against cybersecurity attacks, an IT regional operations technician, which would address increased demand on regional IT teams from the continued use of remote technology, an internal auditor, which would oversee internal financial and operational audits, and a data analyst, which would oversee data collection and analysis in support of both public and private inquiries. The request also includes $257,000 in enhancement expenditures to convert 3 existing FTE positions from magistrate judge to district court judge positions. There are currently 3 judicial districts that have only 1 district court judge for the entire district, and with a district magistrate judge in 5 of 6 counties in those districts. The judicial branch indicates that it is difficult for that sole judge, who also serves as the chief district court judge and has additional administrative duties throughout the district, to provide coverage for specific types of cases that must be heard by a district judge. Accordingly, the agency requests enhancement funding to convert 1 district magistrate judge position in each of these 3 districts to a district judge position. The governor concurred. The House Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendations for '23 with a couple of adjustments. Delete $9 million SGF and add $9 million from the docket fee fund for '23 for expenditures related to the elimination of the judicial branch surcharge. The agency request includes $9 million SGF for such expenditures, which is detailed, well, in the budget that you're looking at. The Budget Committee notes its support of the agency request, but would prefer to make budgetary adjustments pending enactment of legislation that would redirect surcharge deposits to the SGF. Now, that was 2541. We heard that the other day. It passed out here, but it hasn't gone across the floor and certainly not across the rotunda yet. So that's the only reason that we made that adjustment. The Budget Committee requests the House Committee on Appropriations review funding allocations for CASA programs at Omnibus and find a suitable funding source for the $250,000 in distributions to CASA in the absence of distributions from the Key Fund. That wasn't included in the governor's budget this year from the Key Fund, and it's kind of an extraordinary transfer anyway. I think it might be reasonable to look for a more appropriate funding source. I think that's rational. The Budget Committee also recommends a review. Oh, this is going to be my hobby horse. I'll get some emails on this. The Budget Committee recommends a review of statutory restrictions on the number of judges per county at a later date. We had a lot of discussion on this with the rise, finally, after 10 years, of e-court being able to handle a lot of the work remotely and being transferred to areas maybe with a lighter work caseload, can take some of the load off the ones that are piled up. And with the population shift, it seems like at some point in time, and it doesn't have to be today, but the time is coming when we need to review the 1 judge per county requirement. When we looked at the staffing increase here, you saw an increase of 58 people that was necessary. However, if you looked at the efficiency study, it actually showed only 29 were necessary with shifting from other areas. So because of our I won't say it's antiquated yet, but it's certainly in the running for it. Policy, we had to increase 29 people to the staffing of the judicial branch just to make it functional. But we didn't have to. We didn't have to. That's the whole point. It didn't have to be 58 people. It could have been 29. Nonetheless, I think that's something that the Budget Committee recommends that we take a look at that at some point in the near future, and I'll stand for questions.
So in your Budget Committee recommendation, and obviously what came from the judicial branch was the 58 positions,
It was.
even though you have identified that they possibly just need 29, but your Budget Committee still recommended the 58?
We only need 29 if we do away with one judge per county.
All right.
Good question, though.
So I guess in regards to, and obviously I might get some emails about this, in regards to one judge per county, was there any discussion as what a possible resolution would be? And if we would happen to get away with that statute?
You know, I asked the agency about that, and they did not respond, and that was intentional. They said, that's a policy issue, we're not going to get involved. If you bring it up, we'll certainly probably be able to make some suggestions and recommendations, but until it's brought up, they don't want to get involved in that at all.
So as far as the committee discussion, I mean, was there anything as far as how it would be segmented? Would it be based on population, regional? Was there any discussion on how you'd move away from one judge per county and how you would diversify that across the state of Kansas?
Not in the Budget Committee hearing. Absolutely not. We weren't discussing one judge per county while dealing with their particular budget. But in my imaginings, the way that would actually work would be based on caseload.
Okay. And then in regards to the court-appointed special advocate, or CASA, which I would say when we had the budget issues back in, I think it was in 14 or 15, that's where we started having this come from the key fund. And I guess you kind of punted the issue from the Budget Committee to the Appropriations Committee to try to find a funding source. Was there any discussion on what possible funding sources there might be aside from the key fund?
There was. I didn't really punt this. We did some background work on it as well. Actually, they're pretty they're pretty sure that the funding is going to come from the governor's grant office. I don't have confirmation of that fact yet, which is why I didn't mention it in this report. But that's the feeling that we have right now.
And then to extenuate on other issues, the 5% pay increase is going to be a global issue that we're going to be discussing in this committee, so not necessarily reflective in the Budget Committee's recommendation, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Although this does take into account the 2-year deal that we
With the judges.
gave for the judges last year.
Correct. Okay.
2 years ago.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you. Last year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to punting costs off to somebody else, I just hope that we don't lose track of that in our budget process. I think some of the juvenile money that we were talking about yesterday would be adequate for that. If the governor does not fund that out of her grant program, I can't think of a better tie-in when you're talking about children and juveniles, and all of these are obviously juveniles in the court system. So I'm not trying to spend anybody else's money. I just don't want to see the CASA program go away. It's a very important program out there for our kids. And so anyway, can we earmark that to look at a later date if it's not funded through the governor's grant program?
Any further questions? Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question, just to kind of piggyback up upon the Representative Carpenter's comments. CASA has been recommended for an increase in every interim child welfare committee I've been on. So as I guest here today, I would reiterate that it's an important program, and given the funding streams and the potential, I'd like to see that increase not only become stable, but broaden the capability across the state. So, thank you.
Well, I guess it would be a question for Chairman Sutton, and maybe I missed it in your comments when you're going through the budget, but if it has been identified that CASA needs an increase from the 250,000, which I think has been stagnant for many years, what is the increase?
Breakfast for me.
Yes. Representative Francis is going to be providing breakfast tomorrow, so.
We didn't just get a phone ring, we got a whole news broadcast. That was pretty phenomenal. The increase in CASA was not addressed at all in committee. It wasn't brought up as a need. I know that it's not spread throughout the entire state yet, so I wouldn't be surprised to have heard about it, but that wasn't brought up in committee at all. The $250,000 is what they were looking for. And believe me, Representative Carpenter, had I not heard some at least hopeful news from the governor's grant office, I'd have been calling your phone.
All right, thank you. Any further questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to the judicial branch? Representative Landwehr.
Thank you. On the 58 positions, are those classified or unclassified?
Chairman Sutton.
Let's see, I have where they're located. Yeah, it's kind of both on these. They're the district court judges. Hold on, oh, just a minute. My toy went to sleep. Here we go. The district court judges, there were 14. Magistrate judges were 9. Court reporters were 13, and administrative assistants are 22. But as far as who's classified and who's unclassified, I can't give you a specific breakdown on that.
I think we should have that before we take I mean, I'm not going to pull it out here, but I think that needs to be looked at.
Right.
Because I don't believe that magistrates have ever been classified.
Yeah,
I could be wrong on
these
that.
are predominantly unclassified. The question in my head is how many of these actually are classified? And I believe the district judges are, but I wasn't certain on the magistrate judges, which is why I didn't give you a firm answer on that.
Okay, yeah, if you can just bring that back. And then just to kind of reiterate on the CASA, and I'm happy to help do some legwork on this, but we do need to find a stable funding source, and we do need to increase this because we do not have enough CASAs with the increase in kids in custody. Thank you.
Any further questions for Chairman Sutton? Representative Helgerson.
As I read your report, based on the findings of the National Center of State Courts, weighted workload studies on district judges and administrative assistants, as well as the feedback from the chief judge of district courts throughout the Kansas, the agency determined blah, 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 blah. We're heading down a bad road, I'll tell you that. Right now, we have a group outside of Kansas that determines what the caseloads and the workload should be. And we are now setting ourselves up, this appropriation committee, to accept what they recommend as the caseload should be and the workload should be of the district court judges and the staffing, and we're accepting it without question. You know, whenever we did the last pay raise for judges, 5-6 years ago, I had a discussion.
Last
No,
year.
I was thinking it was like 5 or 6 years ago. There was discussion that I had with 3 or 4 of the district court judges that came in and lobbied we needed more money. And I said, when are we going to eliminate the magistrate judge so that we can take advantage of the technology and distribute our staffing and our positions accordingly? They said, well, let's get through the efficiency, which would be 3 years out. Well, it's been probably more than 3 years out. We now have had the subcommittee tell us that we don't need 58 positions, we need 27, but no one will take a position about reducing the one judge in one county because of the political consequences. And now we have taken a position as a House and as a body and as the governor, that what we should do is take somebody else's recommendation about what the judges should be, not change the statute about one judge in every county, and we're going to accept the growth of the bureaucracy. And we have growth in all bureaucracies, and not question it. Yeah, I'll make a motion. You said 27 is what was in it?
29 if we ignore one judge per county.
I'm going to make the motion that we go back to the 29, ignore the one judge in one county, and tell them that if they're going to take on the, passing the responsibility to us, then they have to take on the responsibility of budgeting accordingly and changing their staffing loads in order to meet the needs of the court system. Once you put in all these positions, they're going to be in there forever. So I'll make the motion, we're taking, instead of 58, 29.
Do you know which positions you want to cut out?
I don't think it matters here.
Oh, okay, all right.
If I get a second, then we can figure it out. But I'll just tell you, you're making decisions to pass away the responsibility and the authority and the budgeting to the judiciary, who takes the recommendation from somebody else. Now, at least you should have the recommendation that says, these are the number of cases in this judicial district, and that's why we have a court overload, and we're not able to blend, and we don't have the Supreme Court or Chief Justice who is able to say, let's shift the staffing. Give them the tools. And just so full disclosure, I've introduced the one judge and one county elimination at least twice over the years, and it never goes anybody because everybody knows that it's a political, hand grenade. But if you're going to control the costs, you need to do that. And as for the positions, if I get a second, I'll be happy to.
I second you.
You second it.
All
I'll
right, committee,
follow
you've
the
heard the
recommendation.
motion, seconded by Representative Estes. Discussion on the motion. Representative Helgerson, did you wish to continue?
I'll see if anybody else wants to comment.
Representative Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not really comfortable making a decision on this without having heard some kind of testimony on the impact of that to my area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have much respect for my colleague on my immediate right, Representative Helgerson, and I know how he looks at budgets, but I do want to comment about the part that he read about the NCSC study. I believe that I'm going to go out on a limb here and state that I believe that the judicial branch chose to use an alternative source to verify and justify their requests and to address the situation because we haven't addressed it within the legislature, within appropriations. So I think lending a national voice gave prudence to their request and their position on the judge and staff positions, Mr. Chairman. So that would just be my comment.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were only 2 points that I'd probably want to bring up. First off, it made me really uncomfortable when you said ignore the one judge per county. That statute, we can't really ignore that. We have to pay attention to it. The second point that I'd bring up, however, is taking at face value the results of this study. And I tend to agree with you. I'm not comfortable with that. But then I think about it, and I don't really have a whole lot of an alternative because I haven't visited every courthouse. I don't really have the resources to visit every courthouse, and even if I did, I wouldn't know what is the right caseload, what is the wrong caseload. With the advent of e-court, by the way, e-court will be rolling out throughout the majority of the state by the end of this year. I think that's going to help us with some of our, certainly support staff duties anyway. But without having some basis of comparison, I couldn't tell you what's the right caseload and what's the wrong caseload. It's almost necessary that we rely on somebody else's opinion on that unless we somehow develop that knowledge here as a body. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Estes.
I was with the budget chair until he was the one that told us that, well, we really need 29, and it's hard for me to take money out of people's pockets to pay for the 58 when we know that if we did this a smarter way. So I want to give the chair an opportunity to respond to my concern.
Chairman Sutton.
Absolutely. Yep. We could do 29, but it wouldn't be legal. All right, that's the problem that we have right now. We have the requirement of one judge per county. That's a requirement. If we disregard that, we only need 29. But we can't disregard that. And so that's why we made in the budget recommendations, we said we've got to revisit this issue. This is going to kill us, and it's only going to get worse as population/crime moves to the east, as E-Court is rolled out. We're not going to need one judge per county. We don't need it now, but it's the law. And so that's why we stuck with the 58, even though if we get rid of that, law, we can save some money and maybe even be more efficient while we're at it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe a question for the chair. I'm unfamiliar with this section of law, but it's in statute. It's required by us. Is it?
It's statute.
Okay, so it's statute only. Is there an enforcement clause?
Chairman Sutton.
I can't answer what enforcement of the statute is right off the top of my head. I'd have to review that one.
Representative Owsley, did you?
I was going to yield to Representative Helgerson.
All right, Representative Helgerson.
Those positions are already filled. We're talking about 58 new positions, not judges, not magistrate judges, but additional positions for staffing. Now, we are not, and I used the wrong term, ignore. We're not ignoring the statute. Every county would have a judge. We are ignoring the recommendation as to how many. So they'll still have one judge in every county until we pass a statute that changes that. And every time that's introduced, judges will come out and say, we don't want to, we want to keep our judges in each one of the counties.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He took the words out of my mouth.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Helgerson, you may close.
Couple points. Outside counsel, outside recommendation, because we've ignored. And I appreciate my learned colleague here.
Uh-oh. Wait, which one is it? What are you talking about?
I appreciate this learned colleague. Every time agencies want more money, they have a study, a recommendation that comes from outside sources quite often. Chamber of Commerce does the same thing. I don't discount them. I look at the information and the facts and decide whether or not that's applicable for the state of Kansas. Let me pose this. If we hadn't gotten this $2.7 billion windfall in the last year, would we be putting in 58 positions all of a sudden? We wouldn't, because we'd say we don't have the money. We wouldn't raise taxes for it. We're putting that money in because we have the extra funds. And as a result, we're going to use that opportunity to build the budget up. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars this is going to be. That will never be trimmed again. It is, under this new system, the Supreme Court or the Chief Justice responsibility of managing the resources that we have given them. They've done that so far, but giving them additional 58 positions is my question. And the final thing, we make choices in here. And we have heard that 27 positions is what's necessary. And we're choosing to allocate more than what's necessary with the social service budget coming tomorrow, which I know, as much as I love the members of that committee, they're going to spend more money than what the governor recommended, and you're going to have to choose. Do you put money in the services, direct services for people, or do you put money in for more staffing and more positions for the judiciary? And somewhere you'll have to say to yourself, you can't do them both. Or you can try, and we'll get into a point where we don't have the money available. You know, have some crazy lunatic having to go on the floor and do a 2% reduction. Who would do that? Crazy lunatic. So I'll make the motion. I understand I may not be successful, but you need to get a handle on how you're going to make recommendations in the future.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes appear to have it. Division has been called. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion fails on a vote from 9 to 13. We're back on the budget. Any further discussion in regards to the budget fiscal year 2023 for the judicial branch? Representative Landwehr.
I might share with the chairman that staff just informed me that the judicial branch does not have classified employees.
I received that same update. I was just waiting for an opportunity to squeeze it into the conversation here.
All right, thank you,
were.
Representative
You were.
Landwehr. Any other further questions or comments in regards to the budget for the judicial branch? Seeing none, Chairman Sutton.
I will move the committee recommendations for the judicial branch for budget years 2022 and 2023.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Burrows. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and move back to the bill introductions, and I apologize to Representative Landwehr for yesterday. She had a bill introduction, but before she gives her bill introduction, it is her birthday today. And so I'm going to turn it over to Representative Ballard.
Her birthday. Hey, her birthday. Yeah. Let's go. Oh, you need to stand up, though.
No,
Yes.
no, I don't have my tiara.
Oh, wear your tiara on the floor. I'm sorry about that. All right.
Then
Let's-
Brandon has to buy me another one.
Okay, you ready? Warm up. Let's go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Brenda. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
All right, happy birthday, Representative Landwehr. And now, do you have a bill introduction?
I do have a bill introduction, Mr. Chairman. This one here is RS 3506 for on behalf of the BSRB Board.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Sutton. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill is introduced. Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none. And then also there is, I think, Representative Helgerson, you want to be recorded as a yay vote? Or a no vote? A no vote on the, all right. Right. A no vote on the judicial branch budget. All right. Actually, today we're getting out early compared to yesterday's marathon meeting that we had that lasted 3.5 hours. So breakfast is going to be provided tomorrow by Representative Francis due to his phone malfunction. And tomorrow on the docket is going to be Chairman Carpenter with the Social Services Budget Committee. So until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we are adjourned.